Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I will talk about group by group functions. Group by clause. Group by clause is used to group the records. Group by clause executes row by row. Group by clause will execute after the execution from the from clause. With or without using where clause, we can use group by clause. Group by clause executes row by row or after the execution of group by group. After the execution of group by clause, it creates groups so that any clause that executes after the execution of group by clause, it executes as group by group. We can pass multiple column name or expression as an argument to the group by clause. We can use group by expression along with multi-row function. Here is the syntax for group by expression. The order of execution is first the from clause will execute, then the where clause, if it is used, it will execute, then the group by clause will execute, and finally the select clause will execute. Nature of execution: from clause, where clause, where clause will execute row by row, group by clause will execute row by row, select clause then execute group by group. Having clause. Having clause is used to filter the groups. Having clause will execute group by group. Having clause will execute after the execution of group by clause. In having clause, we can use MRF function, that is multi-row function. We can write multiple condition in having clause. The syntax for having clause is shown below. Order of execution. From clause will execute first, then the where clause will execute if it is used, then the group by clause, then the having clause, then the select clause. Finally, select clause will execute. So here the nature of execution is from, then where clause will execute row by row, group by clause will execute row by row, having clause will execute group by group, select clause will execute group by group. You can see that after execution of group by clause, any clause that executes after group by clause executes group by group. Difference between where clause and having clause. Where clause executes row by row, whereas having clause executes group by group. Where clause is used to filter records. Having clause is used to filter groups. Where clause is executed before the group by clause. Having clause is executed after group by clause. Can accept single row function in where clause, but in having clause it cannot accept single row function. Where clause cannot accept multi-row function. Having clause can accept multi-row function. Where clause cannot accept group by expression. Having clause can accept group by expression. Where clause can use column name or expression in where clause. In having clause, we can't use column name or expression in where clause. Order by clause. Order by clause is used to average the result table either in ascending or descending order. Order by will execute after the execution of select clause. Always order by clause should be the last argument in any query. We can use alias name in order by clause because it will execute after execution of select clause. All the table has been arranged in ascending order based on primary query. By default, it will consider ascending order. We can write multiple arguments in order by clause. We can pass number of arguments also in order by clause. Syntax for order by clause. Order of execution. From clause will execute first, then the where clause will execute if it is used, then the group by clause, then having clause, then select clause, and finally order by clause. Nature of execution: from clause will execute first, then where clause that will execute row by row, then group by clause row by row, then having clause group by group, and select clause group by group.